All right, so this is the results for the survey regarding general preparedness. So I just want to scroll through, show you guys where you think you're at. So we have the Declaration of Independence. Looks like a lot of people are not quite there on the Articles of Confederation. Most of you seem somewhat comfortable with Federalist 10, not so much Federalist 51. Brutus 1, same thing. And looks like we need to spend some time on Federalist 78 and the letter from a Birmingham jail. We really didn't go over before spring break, so we'll spend some time on that. But overall, looks like got a pretty good handle on federalism, fiscal federalism, 10th Amendment, power of the purse. We do need to talk about the budget, so there'll be screencasts on all of these topics, by the way, forthcoming. A lot of confusion about the judiciary. So you can see. Anyway, this is just kind of a benchmark to give me some idea of what these screencasts are going to be dealing with. Okay. Well, let's get started. We're going to jump right into the first topic. By the way, I sent out a zip file that has all of the required readings. So we're going to start with the required readings packet. And what I would do as we go through these is take notes as we go through them. I may ask you to upload some of those notes as an assignment. But these screencasts are really for you as a review. Don't forget you've got an assignment due this Friday where you are going to try to explain all of these Federalist Papers and Brutus 1. So if you're not quite there yet, hopefully this will help you out a little bit. So anyway, let's get started. I'm not going to spend time on the Declaration. I think I highly doubt that's going to be on the exam, but if we need to, we can. Same with the Articles of Confederation. All you really need to know about that is that it didn't work. It not enough power of the national government. So we'll talk about it a little bit in a later screencast. But what I want to start with today is Federalist 10. So here we go. Federalist 10, obviously written by James Madison, the author of the Constitution. Don't forget, all of the Federalist Papers were written to convince perhaps a skeptical public that the Constitution was, in fact, a good idea. So let's look at the title. The utility of the Union as a safeguard against domestic faction and insurrection. So you may recall faction was a big deal in the Federalist Papers. So Madison begins, among the numerous advantages promised by a well-constructed union, none deserves to be more accurately developed than its tendency to break the control and violence of faction. Okay, so his contention right off the bat is that most governments fail ultimately because they fail to accommodate all the diverse views that exist. And of course, creating a country as large as the United States is going to involve a lot of political disagreement. And you may recall in class, that was one of the easy definitions of this idea of faction, is just think of it as generally disagreeing politically and competing in terms of policy. Now, Madison does something that you all should do, which is not just use words, but define them. So in paragraph 2, Madison gives you a definition. By a faction, I understand a number of citizens, whether amounting to a majority or minority of the whole, who are united and actuated by some common impulse of passion or interest adverse to the rights of other citizens or to the permanent and aggregate interests of the community. Now, in class, we talked about, you could possibly get rid of faction if you remove its causes. And Madison immediately shoots down that idea because he says one way of removing the cause of faction is to destroy liberty, to give everyone the same opinion. So in our society, we would think of this as propaganda. We would think of this as something that is highly frowned upon. And then this is the famous line you may also remember from class that I spent a lot of time talking about this. It could never be more truly said of the first remedy that's worse than the disease. Liberty is to faction what air is to fire, an element without which it instantly expires. So Madison is rejecting the idea of trying to eliminate faction by removing its causes, because that would take away freedom. And then he goes on and basically, shoots down the other part two, giving everyone the same opinions, passions, and the same interests is just not practical, he says in paragraph 6. So he makes an interesting statement in paragraph 7. The latent causes of faction are thus sown in the nature of man. In other words, he is making this assertion that faction is inevitable. And if you recall from the review materials, I think it's in the back of your first unit packet, the greatest summation of Federalist 10 is that faction is unavoidable but controllable. So if we go back to his paragraph 3, 2 methods of curing the mischiefs of faction, which is what this is all about, curing the mischiefs of faction. And he's not going with option 1, trying to remove its causes. He's trying to control the effects. So here we have basically that assertion in paragraph 10. The inference to which we're brought is the causes of faction cannot be removed, and that relief is only to be sought in the means of controlling its effects. Paragraph 11 is pretty important. When a faction consists of less than a majority, relief is supplied by the Republican principle, which enables the majority to defeat its sinister views by regular vote. So Madison makes some kind of almost shocking assertions regarding democracy, and I want to focus on why he thinks pure democracy is bad. So paragraph 13, from the view of the subject, it may be concluded that pure democracy, by which I mean a society consisting of a small number of citizens who administer the government in person, can admit no cure for the mischief of faction. A common passion or interest will in almost every case be felt by a majority of the whole. A communication and concert result from the form of government itself, and there is nothing to check the inducements to sacrifice the weaker party or an obnoxious individual. Hence it is such that democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, and have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property. So you think about this in our own system of government. If you had one party in control and for an extended period of time, and another party was constantly being defeated without any outlet for policy initiatives, anything like that, eventually people get upset. And, in terms of, was Madison correct about this Republican idea? Well, again, we talked about this in class before break, early on in the course, I should say. But in America, we switch sides all the time. We elect Bill Clinton, and then we elect George Bush, then we elect Barack Obama, and then we elect Donald Trump. The pendulum swings back and forth and back and forth. And that's because people don't always agree, and they, a republic affords people the opportunity to change course, and without, resorting to violence. So anyway, here's some more on Federalist 10, a republic, by which I mean a government which the scheme of representation takes place. So he's defining, when you're making your arguments in your argumentative essay, you have to define the terms that you're using. It's just good practice, and Madison, of course, does that. Okay, real quick, because I don't want to just get really long really fast. Two great points of difference between a democracy and a republic are, first, the delegation of government, and the latter to a small number of citizens elected by the rest, and secondly, the greater number of citizens and the greater sphere of country over which the latter may be extended. Okay, so I'm going to skip over to the review materials, and if you have downloaded that PDF file, you'll find it kind of an all-in-one with the review packet. So this one right here. And let's just take a look at the summative information on this and make sure I haven't left anything out. Okay. And don't forget, Brutus 1 is largely the opposite view expressed in Federalist 10. Okay, so once again, just to sum up Madison's arguments, he uses definition and comparison to make his points. He defines pure democracy, defines republic. Madison argues that a pure democracy would inevitably result in policies favored by the majority, and here's the key, to the detriment of the weaker party. But also fail to accommodate the needs of the country as it expands and grows. He also says that there is no historical example of pure democracy succeeding in governing large territories. In contrast, he argues that a republic would be large enough to accommodate a diverse and growing population. That's really the key, is that he understood the country was going to grow. It would be large enough to induce greater competition among those seeking elective office. Now, this is a minor point that we didn't focus on a lot in class, but it's an important one, namely that in a republic, there's a competitive process for a winning election. And a large republic would make it so that, in theory, only the best people get elected. I don't know if that's true, but that was the argument. And yet still have a local connection. And it would also make it difficult for a majority faction to emerge, given the size and vastness of the country with competing regional interests. Once again, just think of the constant back and forth in our political system today. We elect one party, then we elect the other party. We elect Donald Trump, then we give the Democrats the House. And it goes on and on and on. Okay, so that is Federalist 10.